Hello there and welcome to the New Player's Introduction Guide to Final Fantasy XIV. So there's no denying that when someone picks up a brand new game, they can be daunting at first. There are a whole host of new mechanics, new abilities, new skills, classes, and much more to choose from, and a lot of mechanics to get your head around. So this series is meant to introduce players to the core pillars of Final Fantasy XIV and get you ready to tackle anything that you might encounter. If you want to help support the channel and help me create content, I'd incredibly appreciate it if you'd smash that subscribe button and leave a like on this video, or dislike if it doesn't meet your expectations, of course. As a newer content creator, every bit truly makes the world of difference. So naturally, a new player is going to have to make a new character, and so I figured that was ultimately probably going to be the best place to actually start this guide series. Through my years of playing different MMORPGs over the years, I've sometimes been asked questions like, does the race I choose matter? What sort of impact will it have on what I can play? And in various different games, it actually makes a huge difference. So we can easily cite games like World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online, where the races chosen in World of Warcraft or ESO have massive differences, and where making the bad or wrong race choice can really impact your gameplay. Let's take for instance Blood Elves that get passive bonuses to Arcane Resistance, Critical Hit bonus, and an additional 10 Enchanting skill. But more interestingly, and probably more important, is that they also get an active ability that strips off one beneficial effect from enemies in an area of effect, which is an ability that I have heard lots and lots about being important in endgame World of Warcraft content. That's not even getting into the fact that certain races only can play certain classes in that game, meaning if you want to be, say, a Worgen Shaman, sorry that's not an option for you, or say you want to be a Volpyra Paladin or Druid. Well, you can't be that because they're locked off from that race. And so race in World of Warcraft is a huge decision. Or for the Elder Scrolls Online, let's take the Bren race, a race often suggested to players who want to focus on Magicka-based skill lines. This Bren race choice gives you passives to increase your maximum Magicka pool, where Magicka is the resource that you use to cast spells in ESO, boosted Magicka recovery so you have even more of it, and then reduced Magicka cost passive even, clearly meaning that they're going to be able to cast a whole lot more spells than other races. Then you can compare this Bren race to the Nord race, where they get passive like Stalwart that increases maximum stamina and ultimate generation, increased frost resistance and immunity to the chilled status effect, and increased physical and spell resistance. Honestly, even just going through these, it's painting a pretty clear picture that in the Elder Scrolls Online, that the race that you choose has a dramatically high impact on what role you're going to play. Obviously, if you're going to go tank, you're probably going to go Nord if you want to optimize that. Whereas if you want to play a magic-based healer or spellcaster, then Bren. Especially with when we're talking about like 7% reduced cost, maximum cap, increased recovery rate, it's a pretty clear picture. So likewise, it does actually make a lot of sense in retrospect why players ask this question. Most MMORPGs out there have some pros and some cons of picking a race. And in Final Fantasy XIV, I can say that this is absolutely not the case, however, for the most part. All races can play all classes. You can be an archer, a conjurer, a thaumaturge, or a gladiator, or any of the other starting classes without being held back. Okay, then the question becomes, will it be suboptimal? Because in ESO you can play any of the classes on any race. And that's a fair follow-up question to that last one, because sure you can, but is it good? I mean, look at the Lalafels. They're a pretty small race. Are they going to be good at tanking? Surely there's going to be passives, right? And not really, actually. In Final Fantasy XIV, there are some racial bonuses that I'm going to reference in this chart here, and this shows what we call attributes in Final Fantasy XIV, and what races get what attributes. Attributes, generally speaking, are going to be some of the most important statistics that impact what you can do in Final Fantasy XIV. For instance, a tank would want high strength to deal more damage, and high vitality to be able to take more hits. A detailed discussion on that is better left for another video though. So pulling this up, we can see that even in the same race such as Hrothgar, that their specific sub-races Hellion or the Lost makes up stat differences. So does that make me a liar on this? I mean, this chart clearly shows that the Hellion and the Lost, for the Hrothgar, both gains 3 strength, lose 3 vitality, gain 3 dexterity, lose 3 int, and then gain 3 mind. Isn't that horrible? I mean, vitality means more health, and so a Hrothgar tank must be terrible. Well, let me pull up my stats on my tank, which is not even best in the slot, but this will really clearly paint a picture. So, how many thousands of strength stat and vitality do I have? Like, my vitality stat is almost at 5,000. So losing 3 vitality against 5,000, just plugging it into calculator, works out to about 0.06%. So this doesn't even make a full percent of vitality difference. So ultimately, what is the takeaway from this? Well, honestly speaking, that racial bonuses basically don't exist in Final Fantasy XIV. So you can pick any race you want and any class you want, and it all does come down purely to aesthetics and what you personally find most aesthetically pleasing. And then comes in the question when you're going through the character creation process of, okay, I need to select a birth date. What is this gonna do for my stats? Unfortunately, birth date is actually 100% fluff, and I can't actually find if it impacts any stats in any possible way. I don't know if it ever even did in the past, but it certainly doesn't right now, so don't feel worried about choosing the wrong birth date. Now comes DIETY, and this part seems to worry a lot of people as of late, especially because some people look at systems like World of Warcraft's next expansion announced with that, which is going to be bringing in covenants, and they have to basically choose a particular covenant, and then you get various passives and active abilities with that particular covenant. And for those who are not overly familiar with that, I have had a few friends and a few new players from World of Warcraft say, oh, our Shadowlands expansion is introducing covenants. Is that what deities are? Which is a totally fair question, because World of Warcraft is a very popular game and a large proportion of our newer players is coming from there. But in Final Fantasy XIV, choosing a deity is much less impactful than covenants. It is nothing the same at all. Bringing up in another table, we can see that elemental resistances are what are actually being impacted by a particular chosen deity. Like if you choose Athlic, you get 2 more earth resistance and 2 less water resistance. So theoretically, what does that mean? Does that make a big difference? What is this 2 more or 2 less? In reality, elemental resistances were largely removed from Final Fantasy XIV last expansion. Even when I checked the market board for various elemental resistance materia, these now have new text saying that they were once believed to be capable of enhancing a piece of equipment's water resistance or whatever element. But likewise, since that was removed, they no longer do that, and likewise the text was even changed. And I can't even find on any of my character profile stats pages like where elemental resistance would be. It's like gone. So ultimately, what does that mean? Well, that choosing a deity really is a non-factor ultimately. There are systems in the game, and I would be remiss to not mention them, where they do involve something called an elemental wheel or elemental damage called EUREKA content. So if you ever hear about EUREKA content, which we'll cover way later at a way later video, it's a very specific piece of content, but if you hear about that, it does exist. Elementals do exist in there, but this elemental resistance isn't going to factor into that. It's a whole different system all of its own. But I myself have never, like, just to cap that off, I have never heard of anyone being rejected from EUREKA content because they had the wrong deity. And in reality, I am not even sure how one would even check that in-game off the top of my head. And so ultimately, what does that leave us with? Well, the fact that Final Fantasy XIV's selections during character creation are massively cosmetic alone. Only cosmetic, actually. Your race doesn't have any significant impact on performance. Your deity chosen doesn't have any impact. Your birthday doesn't have any impact. None of these actually reflect choices on your character in a statistic way that could lead to some kind of disadvantage for you, or a reason to be worried about, oh, if I'm a Hrothgar tank, I'll be rejected from content. You don't need to worry about that. But lastly, let's cap this off by probably one of the most important aspects or distinguishing factors of Final Fantasy XIV from other games. What if you pick the wrong class to start with? Isn't that going to be terrible? Won't you need to create a completely new character? Say I choose an archer, and let's say I don't want to play an archer anymore. Am I going to need to create a new character? That's going to be devastating, right? So in Final Fantasy XIV, very distinct from other games, is that you can play any class, any job, any crafter, any gatherer with no limitations or real barriers in your way. In fact, on my character, I have maxed out everything. Every DPS, every healer, every tank, every crafter, and every gatherer alike. Everything's maxed, and I've played everything. So reality is, even during the process of selecting your starting class, whether it's Gladiator, Marauder, Conjurer, Arcanist, or Archer, you can ultimately play all of them whenever you'd like, and swap between them freely. And, well, that is all for this video, and I really hope that this sets off some of the fears and concerns from newer players that are looking at getting started with Final Fantasy XIV, because I think that, especially when you're not so familiar with all of these choices, that it might be a little daunting, and you might be like, am I really hurting myself if I make the wrong choice here? And so, hopefully this dispels the mystery around that. So, I have to ask you questions that I want to discuss in the comments. What are your thoughts on creating a character in Final Fantasy XIV? Do you like how open this is, or maybe you prefer more distinct choices? Maybe you want a choice that's a little bit more gritty. Let's discuss that in the comments below. And as always, any likes and subscribes go an extremely long way to helping me and helping the channel, and are incredibly appreciated. Anyhow, hope to catch you in the next video. Take care and have a great one.